Okay, I think we've got most people in, and we're gonna conclude the symposium. It's been a SEAPAVAA tradition of sorts for us to have a little conclusion panel. And this particular panel is not quite an interactive one, but it's something that amongst the three of us, we've been assigned to do this panel session. It's really for us to highlight some of the learning points or key, I suppose, themes that we picked up as a result of the 2 days. And in a way, we're summarizing everything that we've tried to digest. And please forgive us if we didn't cover, or we won't be able to cover everything that, that was discussed and presented, but we hope that we would have captured some of the key elements. And this is then where you take off to discuss amongst yourselves and between the different people that you've met, and hopefully lead to greater discoveries and explorations, right? Yeah, so I'm going to just start off. I'm sure we look a little familiar to you already. This is Martina and Rose, and I'm Karen. And we've split ourselves up in a way during the 2 days to listen into everybody's presentations and take in some of the key things that we will now mention. I think we agreed, and I think you will too, that there were two major kind of themes that cropped up across all of the presentations, and of course that was by design as well, because that was the call of for papers. But it naturally came out in the presentations in more forms than what we imagined, right? So one would be collaboration, and collaboration in all its forms. So the collaborative, collaborating, cooperation, all of that being encompassed. And the second component would be sustainability in its various forms as well, environmental, sustainable archiving practices, sustainable archives, making and ensuring our work lasts, all that sort of various components of sustainability, right? And between the three of us, we're just gonna talk about some of the key things that we picked up that fall into and within this two major sort of umbrellas. And I'm sure that as we talk a little bit more, there will be maybe side themes that might crop up as a result of, right? So maybe I'll let Martino start off and see where that takes us, and we'll talk a bit.
Yes, so indeed, collaboration, I felt like a sort of underlying theme in many of the presentations, and in collaboration moving along different directions. So, for instance, collaborating with local realities and institutions. Also, the venue where we are, it's already a collaboration with other form of local institution. But we had other great example, for example, Nobuki from NHK and his reminiscence therapy project, or June Pok and Reminiscence Library, and Ray Tan with the very interesting soundscape program and project. Interesting because indeed it opened collaboration not only with local realities, but also in terms of what actually concerned me more closely, so academia and research. Because for instance, in the case of the reminiscence therapy project, there were involved medical, psychology, and social science academics and scholars, which is something that I would not directly think of. Normally when I think about research and university, I will think about media and film study, but again, archives are many things, and they indeed archive a lot of different knowledge, and that again can be approached with different and new and much broader range of academic and scholars. So yeah, of course we advocate for more collaboration with academia. Not only myself, we had of course our keynote speaker, Professor Fossati, but also Professor Buonrestro Kabab from Philippine Online, but actually proposing a master program in that direction. But collaboration, interestingly, also with external stakeholders and deeply involved with archives, even when they're not an archive. So projects like the KELAS, LIARSIP, which indeed also reveal aspects about research. So in that case specifically, even reviewing the history of cinema and potentially rewriting it from a different perspective, which is indeed the Southeast Asian film history. And also last, and then I'll let you, all stakeholders even more commercially oriented, such as Imagica, which had a very significant impact on specific territories in need, such as the endangered collection from Myanmar, which again is another great example of exchange. And to conclude, of course, collaboration among SEAPAVAA members, also in terms of what we are doing these days, so sharing experiences and knowledge. So for example, this morning Nobuzaku and Zui Cheng-Wong shared what dramatically happened to their archive, but that can constitute again future knowledge for if unfortunately something like that would occur again.
Yeah, and so from the industry component, from archiving in terms of its industry, I see that how as archives in the region, we should be working so much more closely, especially since we do share similar challenges, but some of us have discovered new ways of meeting those challenges, and that's where we should really be, I suppose, I know the pesky little thing has been flying around. So it's actually really working through some of the very difficult issues like copyright, when we spoke about this morning, and I think there's so many things that all of us have yet to deal with, but there are models that we can take upon ourselves to investigate and see how that can be adapted. We can work with our governments, and that kind of collaboration, I think, is long been practiced, and yet it's not quite in the form that we're hoping for, right? We're really now pushing for people to kind of interlock some of our experiences and bring that into the forefront through advocacy with all the different stakeholders that we're actually engaging with. So I've spoken about this in many sort of conferences that we've been attending, about how advocacy is something that we all have to do, but we don't quite like to. It's just such a difficult thing to kind of talk about our work to maybe people who may not necessarily understand it, right? But it's, yeah, or agree with what we're trying to do, but it's so important because it's what we need in terms of support for everything from funds to maybe granting of licenses to you name it, right? And that's something that Rose talked about as well, you know, trying to reach people that, you know, you're talking about something really tough, a difficult subject, but it is necessary to be able to bring those points across to our various stakeholders. Yeah.
About collaboration, we know from the keynote speech of Giovanna, that's what she highlighted. What is good in SEAPAVAA, we definitely have been doing that. And I remember last year when we were gathered in Gather, and yeah, we went to the beach in Gather, remember? So during the breakout sessions, what was good when, I remember Karen saying that we're members of SEAPAVAA, what's the best thing to do aside from gathering every conference? And that would be giving like expert consultations like that, because we're coming from, me particularly, in a voluntary advocacy work. And it's very good to know that given our diverse origins or engagements, we can at least still find common talking points, that maybe we're dealing a smaller collection, you're coming from a bigger collection, or from a well-funded institution to no funded or pro bono advocacy work. The point is we can talk as an organization, and that's definitely highlighted, punctuated by our keynote speaker when she talked about collaboration. And but I also agree. I didn't speak about it during that day because I know I'll be joining this closing panel. That while that's good, it's true that after the conference, we always fall. That always, in a way, fall in the cracks. That saying. We should maybe do more to make sure that in between conferences, we really pursue that collaboration. I don't know what mechanism we can come up with SEAPAVAA, like maybe a message board, like a call out, or maybe there's something like that, but some are missing that platform. So just making sure that when we meet someone, we just don't end in just one email or just exchange of calling cards. We really pursue what we can pursue to make sure we're concretely collaborating. And last, on sustainability, what really give me a big impression was the discussion on the presentation of Ira Buenrostro Cabab. She discussed about being green archivist, and that session was there were only two. That's Horace, and what's good was Horace immediately responded to Ira's presentation, speaking about the reality of how can you be environmentally friendly if you need cold storage and you can consume so much energy. And what is good is Christoph, at the end of the discussion, said, energy is not the evil, because we use the word necessary evil. and Horace said that they are original sin, they're committing the original sin of the aspect on the environment. Anyway, Christoph said that energy is not the problem, it's how it is generated. And though it was not spoken during the workshop, he said after the workshop, going to the break, is that they're building an archive that's 100% solar powered. So the point is, there are ways to explore sustainability even in that aspect. So maybe in the next conference, we can definitely talk more on collaboration and sustainability.
I just want to add one consideration about sustainability for the community and from the community, which I think is essential. And it's essential, especially for about advocacy, and to encourage also those archives that are struggling at the moment. I always think about Myanmar, for instance, or those more recently founded archives, such as the guest from Northeast India, which are really happy to have spoke about. Again, getting engaged communities around is essential, and actually we have a great example, which is the host of the conference, the Thai Film Archive, which I've been studying the history, and advocacy have been so important since the 80s, constant, engagement with the population, and it succeeds because nowadays it's a great institution, solid, established, and well recognized. So indeed, there's a great need to have the communities understanding what you do, archivists, and why your role is so important.
Yeah. One point that came up quite clearly as well in some of the papers was that I think archives need to take some initiative on our part to also stand up for what we're doing, right? Like we need to reach out to our communities, and we want them to benefit from what we do. But at the same time, we should also be bold in our negotiations. We should be brave in what we ask for and how we can protect our work in order that it would be future-proofed. The communities need to give. There has to be that two-way conversation between the archives and the people that we are serving to that extent. And so I thought that came out in some of the papers that it was a side note, but it really triggered me to think that sometimes we do so much without thinking that, you know, we also need people to respond in that sort of positive way, not just asking us constantly to be providing something for them. So we need to perhaps be smart in our communications, in our marketing, in all the different forms of how people might run a business. But we're in the business of archiving. So, you know, that's what we're good at, and we need to perhaps think about how our people that we engage with can do some of this work for us, even if we're not quite equipped as archivists to do that, right? Yeah, so, yeah, I guess I conclude this with saying that we just need to continue reaching out to each other. I suppose a lot of it is that support that we find helps us so much, and finding the availability of people who will be able to help you. And most of us are more than happy to be able to give you contacts, even if we can't extend that helping hand at that moment, but there will be people who we can put you in contact with. And certainly, being able to talk to each other is such a good sort of starting point. So on that note, I would say, and I've been told, SEAPAVAA has a casual meeting that we do every last Friday of each month. I know it's in our region, so we can only expect to see everybody who's in the same time zone. But it is really something that you come, we don't actually have an agenda. It's just for us to be able to ask some questions if there are any. And Sanchai and myself at that, well, if SEC, we've always been attending that. And if we do have contacts that we can put you to, or we can bring you towards, the relevant people, we will. So do join us. It just gives you a chance to meet more people and to talk to each other, and that would continue, right? Yeah. So at this point, yeah, I hope that you've had a great 2 days of conference and 2 days of workshop, and lots of time to actually get to know each other better. And Sanjay.
I'd like to thank the Thai Film Archive.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a round of applause.
Yes. To all the staff.
All the staff,
yeah,
indeed.
who've been fantastic.
I'd like to thank Giovanna Fossati from
Yes.
Netherlands.
And to all of you
All
for
of you.
coming.